Good afternoon. We are live and welcome to No More Peace Soup, the show about that moment when you know something's got to change and you've got to move forward and you're tired of living small. And today I am delighted to welcome Andy Elwood. We will be talking about all things mental health and wellbeing. Hi, Andy, and thank you so much for your time today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think it's, especially for men, mental health is an area that probably gets brushed under the carpet and not recognised terribly well. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about where you came from. I know you've led a really exciting life dangling beneath helicopters in your past. But if you'd like to tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you came to be in mental health.
Thanks, Fiona. So pleasure to be here. I have spent 20 years in the emergency services, most of that time as a dope on a rope or a paramedic dangling under a rescue helicopter. I've done that with the Air Force, with the Coast Guard. I've been a paramedic out in the battlefield rescue helicopter in Afghanistan as well. A few years ago, I started to share some of the experiences, difficult experiences I've been through, and how I'd come through those largely by talking about how I felt and what the experience was like for me. And I tried to share that in a positive way. And really, surprisingly, that was well received in the emergency services sector. And other people put their hand up and said, me too, it's great, we're having a conversation about this. So I've done more and more in that until I've had a pivot in my career, and I realized that I was going to save more lives through a focus on mental health rather than physical health. And how I'm doing that is delivering mental health first aid training instead of dangling underneath a helicopter.
Probably a little safer for you as well.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I suppose it is.
So you're going into businesses, companies, that type of thing?
Yes, so deliver training for individuals. Occasionally throughout the year, I've actually got an open course running like that at the moment, but predominantly I'm delivering this training to organizations who want to start that conversation or enhance that conversation, enable that conversation about mental health within the workplace. And I think that's even more up the agenda. Since we've had the pandemic, people are realizing this affects so many of us. We all have mental health. There is no health without mental health. And workplaces, quite rightly so, are taking account of this. It's looking after the people, but it actually makes good business sense as well.
And I love the fact that you use first aid, because it's that noticing, isn't it? It's that very first part of this is realizing either a colleague or a friend or a partner or indeed yourself has something going on that maybe they don't even see. And we were chatting earlier, weren't we? And I was explaining after I had my son 21 years ago, I had postnatal depression, but I couldn't see it. And I would read these magazines that would tell me, give me a tick list of, how many of these symptoms, if you score higher than, you have postnatal depression. And I would go through them, ticking off, yep, I've got that, no, not that, but yet that, and that. And then I'd go, I don't have postnatal depression. So I don't know whether it was I was talking myself out of it. I didn't think I should have it. I didn't see why I should have it. I thought I should be able to cope with having a baby. That should be normal. And it was only after the effect, I didn't go and get help. And it was only afterwards, when I had some distance from it, that I realized, oh, that's what that was. There was a lot of coping and shame and all sorts of stuff attached. How do you see that cropping up, especially with, and not obviously men necessarily after they've had a child, though I do believe it is quite prominent that men have postnatal depression after having a child. But how do you see that? How do we notice when somebody's struggling?
So spotting the signs and spotting them early is a great thing to do. And I love the first aid as well. It's such a great pivot transition for me, moving from physical to the mental. And do you know what? A whole lot of the signs are actually physical, that our physical health deteriorates. And on the course, because of my background, I draw a lot of parallels between physical health and mental health, physical first aid and mental health first aid. Um, so me arriving on scene in a helicopter as a paramedic, if a casualty had a physical first aider on scene before I arrived, their decline, their injury was often arrested. Maybe that downward trend was slowed down or flattened out. But in most cases, just a first aider on scene doing a minimal intervention started a positive trend before I arrived there with more knowledge, experience, kit, and confidence to do things. And it's just the same with mental health first aid. So we don't make a diagnosis. It's all about, as so such a brilliant question, which we hadn't rehearsed. Looking for those early signs and symptoms is so important. Just like with physical health, an early intervention provides a better outcome. So the kind of things that we're looking for, because there is so much shame, stigma, embarrassment, fear of judgment, fear of showing any weakness, especially for men, as proven by Brené Brown's research. What we're looking for are those changes in someone, yeah? And some of that may be in the background, maybe going through a massive change in life, a major life event. So the example you've given, so like a birth of a child, one example of something which is thought of and widely recognized as a positive change in your life is not without stress. There's a lot of change there. There's a lot of difficulty, and there's a whole change curve to go through. If any of the men watching the video is familiar with the change curve, very similar shape actually to the bereavement curve. So there can be this shock adjusting to the big change. There can be these mix up of emotions, anger, resentment, plunging down towards depression, maybe at the lowest point, before we start to experiment with it and try and integrate it into our lives and then accept it and move on, living with that change. So you're absolutely on the money. For new fathers, there's been an incredible amount of change in their lives in the run up to the birth, maybe during the birth and after the birth as well. And sleep is so tied into that. We're learning so much more about sleep. Sleep is such an important thing for us to be well, both physically and mentally. More and more research done on that now. A recent piece has shown that we can, as humans, we can survive longer without food than we can without sleep. So I don't know if the Air Force have updated their survival techniques and priorities since I went through the training, but sleep wasn't on there, and food was prioritized more. So I wonder if they have readdressed that. But another piece of research, and I think this is relevant here, from the emergency services sector, has shown that we're not open yet about talking about being stressed or having poor mental health. Just like many other sectors, many other industries. And I think this really ties in for men being a male-dominated environment, male-dominated sector, is the first thing that we feel comfortable, proven by research, to open up about is, do you know what? I'm not sleeping well. I am so tired. I'm just exhausted. I cannot get a good night's sleep in. So if someone is giving you that narrative, if you're realizing that about yourself or someone you care about close to you or at work, a colleague is giving you that narrative, let's be curious about that. Let's ask some more questions. Let's find out what's really driving that. That is someone taking a positive step, showing some courage to start to open up about what's going on.
It's pushing on that open door, isn't it? It's once there's a little crack, it's just pushing on that open door to find out a little bit more about what's going on. And that is, as you say, it's kind of an acceptable thing, isn't it, to come to work and go, oh, I'm just so tired.
Yeah.
And I know, going back to my experience having my son woke up every hour and a half. So it was like Japanese water torture, you know. It literally, if somebody came and woke you up every hour and a half, after a few months, you'd be forgiven for your actions, you know. And then that's coupled with, but I love this child, and how can I, you know, how can I have so much love for a being and be so stressed about it? So just leading back into that, fathers are going to be experiencing some sleepless nights along with their partners.
Yeah, absolutely. And the relationship, instead of being a team, it may be a bit more at loggerheads, a bit more irritable as well, because you're both down on sleep too. So sleep, a massive factor. And even if people are covering it up well at work and wearing this mask, as many of us have done, covering up their depression at work, do you know what? That is exhausting in itself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely exhausting. So even if someone doesn't have this narrative, we may see the bags under the eyes. We may see them yawning more. We may, depending on what the setting is, realize that they're falling asleep now and again. They're dozing. They're maybe not as switched on. If we're thinking about physical symptoms, they're maybe not as focused, as able to concentrate. They're maybe procrastinating, not as decisive as they used to be. Memory is proven to not be as effective as it used to be as well. All proven by research. So these are some of the signs that we may spot. People not engaging in the activities that they used to enjoy. That's another one. People withdrawing away, maybe having time off work, maybe realizing themselves, do you know what? I really don't want to show this. I'm not as able to, not as productive as I used to be. It takes me longer to complete tasks. So they're actually, instead of being off, they're maybe the opposite, 180 of that, and they're actually first in and last out now. Yeah. In extreme cases, they're maybe even working over weekends. They're maybe taking leave to catch up on work. So if we're thinking about it in a work setting, maybe they've had some near misses, some little accidents, incidents, because they haven't been as switched on. They haven't been their normal selves. Yeah. So all sorts of things we can pick up at work, but maybe in a more social setting, that loss of sense of humour. Somebody that normally is a happy-go-lucky, can-do kind of guy, life and soul of the party, they're maybe withdrawn. They're maybe putting more barriers up. They're not engaging. They're not turning up for events. They're letting you down last minute. So again, worth checking in with those men too. Absolutely.
And you mentioned earlier about how great men are at not talking about this, but getting really good at maybe drinking too much or substance abuse, let's say. So that might be something, if somebody's in your life is drinking a little more than maybe they normally do, would that be something to pick up on?
Absolutely, yeah. Any changes like that. So, yeah, men are proven. Women. Let's talk about women for a little bit. Is that allowed on this show? Just a little bit, right? Okay. So, the stats show that women, what they're good at is talking to their social circle, their family and their friends, and actually reducing what's in their stress container, letting that stress out by talking. It's a proven technique. And then they often have the courage to put their hand up and go and get some help, because they've bounced off their family and friends. They've got another perspective. They find hope. They find a way forward. They go and get some help. They maybe get a diagnosis and they start a recovery journey. So women in the UK have more cases, more diagnosis of anxiety and depression, the two most common mental health conditions. Men, we're over at the other side of the graph, and what we're good at is exactly as you say, not talking about it, bottling it up. It's maybe locked away in a little safe box, in a safe that we've locked up with a combination. We've thrown away the key. It's locked in a vault in a corner in the very back of our brain, and we try to bottle it up and not go there.
Yeah. But
And
it's
we're
not
really
still there humming away in the background.
We don't know when it'll resurface, but the chances are that it will resurface at some stage, and maybe when we least expect it or when we least want it to. So what we're also very good at is substance misuse, whether that's alcohol or other substances, as you say, and death by suicide. We are very good at killing ourselves as men in the UK. So three out of every 4 suicides in the UK are men, which kind of follows the worldwide trend. If we look at worldwide trend, being a Movember ambassador for Men's Health, I'm aware of that. So every hour, 60 men around the world end their life by suicide, Fiona. It is really
One a
shocking.
minute.
1 a minute around the world, yeah. So 3 out of every 4 suicides in the UK are men. So if we can normalize that conversation around suicide, and that is proven as the best way to help someone is to have a conversation about suicide. If you're worried about a man at all, ask him kindly and compassionately about suicide. Or things sound really tough right now. Are they so tough that you're having thoughts of suicide? So we can ask kindly and compassionately. It's a game changer of a question. I've never regretted asking it. It's proven to reduce stress and anxiety. It enables that man to find safety and trust, to find someone that is willing to listen and engage in a conversation about their worst fears. It enables another perspective and to have a conversation instead of a one-way monologue when maybe all the options are closing down and someone is heading on a one-way corridor just towards suicide as the only option for this short term. Often it's a real temporary, massive spike in stress in their lives due to one major event or a series of events happening in close succession or all together in a perfect storm.
Yeah, it's I think a vital conversation that needs to be had, and I think a lot of we're afraid of suicide as a population. We're terrified of suicide. It's something that people want to brush under the carpet and pretend doesn't happen, and I think it's reached a point now where we can't ignore this anymore. And when you talk to families of people who have taken their own lives, so many of them say, I had no idea. There were no obvious signs. And I remember listening to an interview, and I don't remember who the people in the interview were. It was a military guy talking to the wife of a chap who had PTSD. And it surfaced that he was considering suicide, and the advice to her was, he's a military man, he will have a plan. And she was horrified to the thought that he'd actually was rehearsing this in his head, and he would have actually had a plan for it. And they said to her, you need to have that conversation, and you need to ask him to make you part of the plan, as in, before you do this, I'm your wife, I'm your partner in life. Talk to me, promise me that you will talk to me first. So it wasn't even about trying to stop him doing it. It was talk to me first. Because as you say, this early opening of that conversation, opening up to that could be the thing that will prevent the action the ultimate sacrifice that I think men believe suicide is. It's that idea, well, they'll all be so much better off without me, and the ultimate sacrifice.
So there's various reasons that we know. So a lot of people want an escape from their pain and suffering rather than to actually die. They want an end to their sense of helplessness, things feeling out of control, their sense of suffering, pain. They want an end of the exhaustion. So sleep again, when someone is having thoughts of suicide thoughts, sleep is such a factor. It really does. If we're having a lack of sleep, we don't think clearly, or suicide thoughts are exacerbated, and alcohol increases the likelihood of us engaging with those as well by reducing our inhibitions, and other substances can as well. So could it come in and layer a little bit more knowledge there on for people that are watching around what you've just talked about with that husband and wife situation? So having suicide thoughts, that is really common. Yeah, 20% of the UK population have had those thoughts, and that's just the people who had the courage to put their hand up, tick the box on the survey. Probably a lot higher. It's 25% in the emergency services sector. Certain sectors of work, occupations are more at risk. So people in the NHS, vets, farmers, people who work alone, and people in the construction or building industry as well. Just so more at risk of having it. So these are really common. These are 3 things you can tell someone to give them some information about suicide. These suicide thoughts are really common. They are temporary. They don't last forever. Yeah, and just because we have them, we don't have to act on them. So for many people, these thoughts come in out of nowhere. They're really unsettling. They're really difficult to deal with. It doesn't feel like you've maybe had the thought yourself. They come in out of nowhere and they will leave again. And many people don't engage with that. They just think, yeah, that's one option for the situation I find myself in, but I'm not engaging with that. But it can be really difficult to deal with those. What your that wife was encouraged to do was to investigate actually whether those thoughts were staying a little bit longer, and whether her husband had put together a plan for how it was going to go. So it's if he's engaging more with these thoughts and actually having suicide behavior. So it's 2 different things. So someone can have those really unsettling, difficult, intrusive thoughts, and they might leave again. When someone starts to consider that as more of an option and starts making a plan, and the more detail that's in the plan, the more at risk the person is to actually go through with it. That's what we term more as suicide behavior. Yeah. So in the mental health first aid course, we learn to ask directly about suicide first. And if we get an answer that yes, someone is having thoughts, suicide thoughts, then we use a CPR mnemonic to go in and question a bit more as to whether they've got actually suicide behavior. Have they got a current plan? Have they got the resources for the plan? Yeah. So life-saving, really simple questions, but having the courage to ask those doesn't take much. Get yourself on a mental health first aid course and you will learn those skills. You'll have the knowledge to back it up, and you'll have the confidence how to do that. It's a real myth, which I must bust for you now, and we do on the course, that asking someone about their thoughts of suicide will encourage them to kill themselves. That's a myth. It's something that really is proven time and time again to help and actually to save lives.
Really important.
The wife being part of that plan, I would actually call that part of his support plan.
Yeah.
So when he's having those thoughts again, positive action to take. That's what we want to think about, rather than making that person feel guilty or listing things for them to avoid. It's positive actions to take. So that may be calling the Samaritans on a free number 24/7 116 123, texting the word shout to 85258. So it's the middle numbers of your phone, starting at the bottom, going up and back down, 85258. And that's 24/7 service, tech service manned by volunteers, just like Samaritans, really helpful. But the support plan, anyone who is having thoughts of suicide or supporting someone with thoughts of suicide, if you download the free app called Stay Alive, it's a fantastic resource for someone who's having those thoughts and someone who is supporting that person as well. It's an award-winning app. There's loads of resources in your area in addition to those I've given you, which are national resources.
And that's called Stay Alive.
That's called Stay Alive. I'll maybe, shall I put a few of those things in the chat for people or not?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah. just so that and then copy those out and put them under the post. That's okay. We got there. There's a few bits and pieces there. I'm just copying them out. I've just gone into the private chat, so I'm just copying them out and popping them into the comments.
All right.
No, that's fine. That's fine. They're going to go through. We're going to get them there. I think it's really important that people have that access.
Thank you. I'll pop over to comments now. It's my first time on StreamYard. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's a system to get used to. Yeah, thank you for that. That's so very important. And I know we've spoken particularly towards men in this, but obviously women are 1 in 4 of those statistics. So it's as important to keep an eye on everybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody. So we've we're at work or we're with our families and we start to notice somebody's not sleeping too well, and maybe they're drinking a little too much, or they're not as productive or as joyful, or whatever's going on. We start noticing these things. What's the next step that a person can take to support somebody, not necessarily in a suicidal situation, but in a mental health arena?
Yeah, just make an approach. Try and make them feel comfortable. We're wanting to build that safety and trust with them, that human connection, that they can feel it's okay to speak to Fiona, or it's okay to speak to Andy, or whatever your name is. So it's not about you, it's all about them. Where will they feel comfortable? Is it in a private setting? Is it going for a walk together out in nature? Is it in the shed doing some DIY? Is it working on an old vehicle? Whatever the hobby pastime is, if you know that person well, think about when is a good time to approach them and just ask them open-ended questions. What's going on? What's happening? Catch up with them, allow them to open up.
Are you okay? And then getting, yeah, I'm fine, it's not enough, is it?
No. So there's some great campaigns, and it is that's not the way I would start now. I've really moved away from that, but asking that is better than asking nothing. These campaigns have shown that asking a second time shows that you really do care and you do want to listen. So, but how are you really, Fiona? How are you within yourself? Asking a second time shows that you do care. So we can do that. But for me, to be honest, I've moved away from that, because saying you're not okay is a massive switch to throw. And it's not just like a light switch on off. It's for me, I think that's why so many people mask it up and say I am fine, because it's not like a light switch. It's like hitting the big red nuclear button that all the sirens are going to go off. Andy is not okay. So whereas it's more like a dimmer switch, and we can turn it up. Do you know what? I'm okay in most areas of my life, but this is really difficult here. I'd love to chat to you about that. So asking what's going on, how someone is, it's a much better way of finding out what they're spending their time thinking about, what's bothering them, what's troubling them, what's going on.
The sense I got when you said that was like, it's like the floodgates. If I can remember being very upset about something years ago, and somebody asked me if I was okay, and it was literally exactly what you said. I went from being absolutely fine in the back, but the moment they said, "Are you all right?" it was like, "Wah!" and the floodgates just opened, and I was inconsolable. And I think we're often afraid of that response, that if I open up, it's all going to come out, and I don't know how I'm going to get it all back in.
Totally, it's a can of worms, and I think that's the big thing for men. We haven't been brought up to talk about our emotions. We don't
Mm,
know what that's all about because we haven't experience of dealing with it, talking about it,
mm,
experiencing it. Um, so for people bringing up young men, a great book is Raising Boys in the 21st Century by Steve Woodolph. I think it's from Australia, but it's all based in research. Some real practical stuff there to engage men earlier with their boys with their emotions, so as when they become men, they're not in this trying to catch up this no man's land that myself
mm.
and so many other men have found themselves
Being
in.
able to label the emotions and having the vocabulary is so important to be able to express. And there was a gentleman said to me, and this made me laugh, and it's kind of funny, but it's not really funny. He said men have three emotions: angry, hungry, and horny. And although we jested, that is, it's quite a funny remark. There is a truth behind it, that how do you feel often is anger. That's it. That's all they know how to that's the only avenue that's open to them to express how they feel, which obviously makes that opening of the floodgates a very scary thing, because
Yeah,
lead could mean it's anger.
yeah, we might get frustrated in there as well, but it's along the same lines, isn't it? We
Mm.
may get happy in there as well, but most men struggle to go past five emotions, even without the hungry. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're not good at it. A piece of work I've been doing for quite a while with a client who provides all the civilian company provide all the military flying training. It was really interesting. We had some old school guys, really experienced guys in the room, and some newer students one day. And
Mm.
there was quite a bit of banter going on about the snowflake generation, etc., and going back and forth. But those fellas, those young men, they were much more comfortable talking about their emotions, talking about difficulties in their life. And
Mm.
I think the tables were turned actually, and it was okay to do that. That's
Yeah.
that's a big message, I think. Not just that it's okay to talk; it's much more than that. It's so helpful to talk in letting out what's in our stress container. But I think what you've said, naming it, labeling it, that is so helpful. You can go, oh, I know what this is, and then we can build on that from there. We can grow, realize just because I'm feeling angry or I'm feeling anger doesn't mean I am an angry man. This can be a normal human reaction to the situation I've found myself in. Maybe it's really justified, yeah. And if we know a little bit more about ourselves and positive coping strategies and immediate stress reduction techniques, such as exercise, which most of us like as well. Yeah, talking to someone else, getting a good night's sleep, or finding some kind of mindfulness or relaxation technique that
Yeah.
can reduce that. We can deal with it. And it's okay to feel like that. It doesn't have to dominate our lives when we know how to name it, release it, and let it go.
Mm.
And I don't know if you've had anyone on talking about mindfulness and relaxation techniques, Fiona, before, have you? Have you explored that?
Not We haven't had anyone yet. We're only on episode 8, but
Let me tell you a little bit about that. So it's not all, it's because a lot of men really shy away from that. It's like, I'm not
yeah,
doing yoga. I don't need to be sitting cross-legged and focusing on my breathing. It's not all about that.
yeah,
That is one way you can achieve it. I can be very mindful when I'm spannering on my old classic Land Rover, when I'm even driving that, when I'm riding a motorbike, riding a mountain bike. Um, any hobby that you have, it's all about living in the moment. So doing some DIY, getting in the shed, washing the car, whatever you enjoy doing, do that. Get lost in the moment. If you can use your senses, that is all the better. Cooking is a great thing. If you're out there barbecuing or making a curry, so many men enjoy doing that. Prepping the veg, getting your ingredients together, all the smells, sense of taste, you're adding more seasoning or not. That is a fantastic way to be mindful. So there's loads of really practical ways we can do that. to take our minds off this overthinking, repetitive thoughts, and those more difficult emotions. Yeah.
Yeah, I know clients of mine have talked about they get lost in scrolling on the phone, visual Valium, or watching videos of boats crashing or other things. So what you're saying is rather than just watch something, is actually involving your body and mind in it. So it's almost not sitting stationary, but actually getting physically involved in something, whether it's cooking or cycling, but actually that sounds like there's a real bodily aspect.
I think that's helpful for so many of us. We don't always have the energy to do that, although it's a bit of a spiral, isn't it? We can go in a downward spiral. I know I did that when I had my worst episode of depression, but the good news is there's hope, and we can spiral back up. So taking some exercise with someone else. There's 5 ways of well-being, proven by research. Is 5 a day for positive mental health, and if we're combining a few of those in one activity, the easiest one for most of us is playing team sports, because we're connecting with other people and we're getting exercise. Okay, you're getting more bang for your buck combining things like that. Learning something new, giving something back is great as well, and that taking notice or mindfulness. We can do that in so many ways. It's a number one way for people to de-stress during lockdown was to go for a walk outside in nature if possible. Listen to those sounds, those smells. Great time of the year to be doing it, Fiona. We can see nature blossoming in your garden if you have one, in the allotment, in a park not too far away, hopefully. All the changing plants, bees, birds. If you've got a veggie patch like me, there's daily changes there, and you can go and reap the rewards.
So there's lots and lots of things that can be done to process those thoughts. It's not a distraction technique, and I think that's probably what I was getting at just now about, scrolling might be a distraction, whereas mindfulness practices are actually processing the something I like. I call it no thing thinking, where it's happening, the thinking is happening, but you're not stuck in the thoughts.
Yeah, it's processing in the background, a bit like in sleep. Like our brain is amazing, just like our body is, how our body can heal itself when we give it some good nutrition and sleep and rest. It's the same with our brain as well. So we need to take a break, do something different. Putting some, I think, creating some positive habits or routine. For so many of us, routine is so important, and it doesn't have to be much. It's a great way to improve your sleep, is to try and put some sort of routine in it there. But I kind of jump back. I didn't say it's okay to watch Netflix and do a bit of binge viewing as well. That is okay. That is a great distraction. And I suppose what you get lost in there is the story of someone else's situation. If it's a good series, film, that can distract your thoughts, and like you're saying, give your brain a rest from this cyclical, repetitive thoughts, which is so wearing and is difficult to escape from. Yeah,
I think when a person is in overwhelm, sometimes they feel that certain activities is just adding more to it. So it's really understanding that these things are actually going to be decompressing that overwhelm, and putting that, even if it is a simple routine, it may be not meditating for half an hour, maybe that is going to be too so it's taking, can you do it for 3 minutes? Is bringing it down into the bite-sized manageable pieces that and getting started.
Yeah, make a start. Try something different. So there's a great series of Just One Things to Try by Michael Mosley on BBC. I think it's on Radio 4, but if you search iPlayer, you'll find them on there. It's Just One Thing by Dr. Michael Mosley. And one on there that I would recommend blokes trying is just to focus on what's good in their life now. Try a daily gratitude practice for me, that was a game changer in two ways. In my worst period of depression, I'd sit down every morning and write down three things that I was grateful for now. So it's ruling out those comparisons and stopping having that long list of things that are wrong or things you can't do anything about, and focus on just three things that you can
Yes.
be grateful for now.
Yeah.
But fitting that in to your daily life is great. So for me, I love coffee. I'm always going to have that first cup of coffee in the morning. And what I've built is super simple routine, but just to give you a really easy example, if that's okay, Fiona.
Yeah.
Coffee pot goes on, little espresso maker, get that set up in the morning. That goes on in the on the top of the stove. And the time it takes that to make itself, I can do a couple of stretches on the kitchen floor, a couple of sun salutations that really stretches out the parts of my body that need to stretch, in my shoulders and the backs of my legs. And then as I'm enjoying my first beautiful espresso of the day, I get my little book out and I do my gratitude list. Yep. And that just starts me off on the right foot. Whatever I'm going to tackle today, whenever when things go wrong, I've got the day off in a positive way that I
Yeah.
know works for me. And it only takes a few minutes. I'm going to have that coffee anyway. I'm doing something positive while it's brewing, and then I'm doing something positive while it's drinking. Game changer again. If the day does go to hell in a handbag, I nearly swore there, but I never check if I was allowed to swear or not. If your day goes all wrong, that can be really difficult to stop those repetitive thoughts. Going to bed,
Yes.
going to sleep at night, isn't it? Game changer for me to do the gratitude list at the end of the day as well. Get the book
Yes.
out. Right. Well, what went well? And we're focusing on the positive things. Get a few of those, and we've got a positive focus. And then when I close that book, that's the day done, ready to sleep. And that's amazing. A really difficult day last week. Something fairly big happened, and I did all that, light off, and I don't know how much longer I was still awake. Let's put the light on, wrote down some more things, wrote the same list again. Super simple thing, and that was it. Off to sleep for the day. Yeah. These
Fantastic.
super simple things really work, and you find what works for you. Yeah, there's no one golden bullet, silver bullet.
What I love about that is it's simple, it's not time consuming, so it doesn't add to the overwhelm. It is a bite-sized, manageable thing to do. It helps with the sleep, which, as you said, was the first indicator, the first thing to notice. It helps with your sleep. And so just do it, just bookending your day with a simple gratitude practice. And stretches, something physical. That's something everyone probably could wind into, even the busiest of lives, even if it is that you get up 5 minutes earlier before the kids get up, or just taking that little bit of time each end of the day. Those are the times you can implement this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that it's amazing how much a simple routine helps people. So all the ways we can build that in is at lunchtime. Are we getting outside? Are we eating lunch away from our desk? Yeah. Do you know how we manage these things as well?
Yeah.
Are they managing us, or are we managing them? Or are they a tool for us, or is that thing running our life? That is so important. So turning off notifications on your phone and having lunch away from your desk or wherever you work, if you're still working from home like me, according to Bruce Disley, who used to be an executive in Twitter, that is the two best things you can do to increase your productivity. Really good for your mental health as well as your productivity.
It's something that I noticed with my clients when they started working from home, and a lot of them still are, is that the end of their work day doesn't happen anymore. It used to be that, I came to a certain time, I've got to catch a train, or I've got to, there's a hard edge to the end of the day. And working from home, that edge has become blurred, and they're working. So where they might have had an hour and a half's commute before, they're now working. They're not claiming that back and having an extra hour and a half of free time to be at home. They're actually working that extra time. So I think a ritual at the end of the working day is vital for working from home, to say, put an alarm on you've got a half-hour warning, you're going to close up, write your to-do list for tomorrow, and switch off, I think, is a really important thing for us to do when we're working from home.
Again, that's creating a bit of a routine, maybe having a stop time for yourself. And you maybe don't have to be completely hard and fast. Many of us have extra deadlines, times where we're working harder. That's okay. But whenever you are closing it off, have a routine, have a checklist. I would say, coming from an aviation background, have a checklist. The NHS created some recently. You can Google that and see what's been difficult today, what has went well. So we're doing what's went well last. We're focusing on that and the gratitude again. Do we need to check in with anyone in our team? Do I need to check in with someone for me if it's been difficult? And then simple things that maybe many men, if they've got a uniform at work, I used to get changed and leave my work clothes in the locker, change to go home, which was part of that process as well, that commute. We're missing that. Listening to what we want on the radio, listening to that podcast. You can get that if you go on a walk. Maybe schedule your dog walk if you have a dog. So many of us do now. Get that outside time again. Many more people are telling me, I think women are better at this, actually, changing their clothes. At the end of the workday, right? Let's put on the trackies. Let's pull on the jeans. If whatever you're going to do, just have a change. And focus on family time, downtime, whatever your activity is just now. I think a key thing for many men, especially if they are finding life is a challenge, they're finding their mental health is moving towards the negative end of the continuum, is plan something for your downtime. It's really great in so many ways. We've got something to look forward to. We've got something in the diary. It's not hopeless out there. We've got something we're looking forward to. We're planning for that. We're maybe getting ready for it. But rather than moping around and letting our thoughts take over whenever we've stopped work, if we've got that activity planned, we've maybe arranged to meet someone or do an activity with someone, we tend not to let them down. We've got a better chance of actually following through with it. So getting dates in the diary, getting little projects, little goals in there are fantastic. Really positive thing to do.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're looking at their workplace, and I know I did some research a few years ago about what was in place for mental health support, and often the answer I got a lot from people in the corporate world was, I think there's something in our insurance. There's a tick box, mental health. There is someone you can go and talk to if. But it didn't seem to me that it was really proactively part of the corporate culture to ensure these things. So if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, you know what, I could do something here. I could make the work environment better, even if it is that your team are working from home. What would you suggest? You mentioned earlier you provide this mental health first aid training. How could they go about getting some training in their corporation?
Well, they can give me a shout. They can email me, being blunt about it. They can email me at chinwag@andyelwood.com and I'll give them a load of information on mental health first aid. But that's only one part of the picture, really, for keeping people well at work. So what you're talking about there, Fiona, is an employee assistance program, or an EAP. And many organizations have them. In my experience, though, every organization that they're provided in, they're part of people's package but they get told about it in their induction. They're wanting to impress. They're thinking about their new job, getting on with people. That gets shoved in the back of the locker, in the back of a file, whatever, and people don't take it in. We can never publicize that enough in an organization. There's so many simple, practical uses in there as part of that employee assistance program. It's not just all about mental health. So there'll be physical health things. There'll be legal advice if you've got a dispute with your neighbour. There'll be, I think it's going to be more and more prevalent. Most of them have something around financial advice with the hardship coming up, with the cost of living going up. I know during COVID, that aspect of them was used a lot more than previously. So do engage with that employee assistance program. But if you're a manager, team leader, just start checking in with your people. Bring your whole self to work. Talk about what's going on in your life. Share some of those positive things. It doesn't have to be that you've been through a real difficult time. You don't have to share something difficult. If you're comfortable to do that, that is fantastic. That will build safety and trust with your team, and that it's okay to have these ups and downs of life, because we all have them. Our mental health varies over time. We all have mental health. But sharing the positive stories, the little moments of joy, shows that you're human as well. That's spreading good news. That's infectious. That lifts everybody's mood a little bit. Often just the smiles. You're smiling now, I'm smiling back. Very infectious smiles, just like yawns, just like positive news as well. So share that. Create a little space for people to share that too, whether that's a separate meeting, maybe that's a bit more relaxed, once a week, once every so often. But what many organizations are doing is having a check-in at the start of meetings. Just how is everybody doing? And if someone has got something major going on, maybe today isn't the day that I want to pitch that big, brilliant idea and get Fiona to say yes. So there's all sorts of uses. Maybe I'd be better leaving that until Fiona says at the start of me, oh, I've had a fantastic weekend. I'm just buzzing. I think I'll tell her about that idea today. So, and I learned a lot of this about this with other training I used to deliver with midwives. They would, we were talking about how to be safe and good communication in the team. For me, that was a pre-flight briefing before we went flying. They were saying, well, we have a huddle, Andy. So we have a huddle and we talk about what's on today's shift, what patients we have, what doctors are on call, any issues with the building, equipment, etc., etc. We have a huddle, and then we have a cuddle, and we check in with everybody and we see how everyone is. And it's just fantastic. When I was flying after my first wife said she wanted a divorce, I told everybody on the crew my first day back, listen, I'm well enough to be here. I've thought about it, but this is going on in my life. So I mightn't be just as switched on, as focused, as concentrating. Please help me out. If you see me missing something, if you see I need another piece of equipment, look after me, do a double check today, because my mind just might not be completely on the job. So we can look after each other. And it's not what you'd do it for someone else, wouldn't you? So why not ask for it yourself? Being open and honest, it's such a great way to go. We can role model that if you're confident enough to do that within the team, but enabling that for people, especially men, to do that within the team is a really great thing for leaders to do. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love the huddle and the cuddle. And starting a meeting with something positive that's happened in your life, and just getting used to speaking about emotions, and start speaking with the easy ones, the good ones.
Yeah,
absolutely. And having those conversations. And I think the old corporate ways, they're not really supporting people. This change is vital for the companies to stay alive. To keep your people engaged and happy and level-headed and able to be what they need to be. Whether, as you say, people go through divorces. I know of people who have showed up to work going through horrible divorces and not told a soul. And that's tough. It's that shame piece again. It's, I should be able to cope with all that's going on. And all too sadly, and I speak about men particularly, is they hit the crisis before they ask for help, and it's sad. It's sad to see you maybe you don't need to be divorced. Maybe you don't need to lose access to your kids or a relationship that you've worked so hard for, or a career that you've worked so hard for. Perhaps that is all fixable before it hits that crisis point. And it starts with this communication, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not just you talking, that's proven by research now. So the Aristotle study from Google showed that the number one thing for high performing, highly effective teams, the number one factor in all those teams was psychological safety. It's a term that we hear bandied about more and more, but that is being able to have an honest conversation with someone, being able to ask questions, being able to ask for help. To speak openly, honestly, and freely. That delivers support to each other, produces more innovation and more effectiveness. And that's been shown in workplaces now, in the Great Resignation over in the States. That's the number one reason, if that's not there, for people leaving that workplace, okay? And especially if they're not getting that from their manager, from their boss. I don't think I've mentioned Brené Brown. I can't not mention Brené Brown. Okay.
Brené Brown, yeah. You slipped her in really early on in the conversation.
So Brené Brown, for those men who don't know, or anyone that's listening that doesn't know, she's a researcher into shame. She's based in the States. She's a researcher who tells stories. That's her description of herself. So short video you can pick up around this. If you just Google YouTube for empathy versus sympathy, it'll come up from Brené Brown. It's a few minutes long, and it's empathy that we're wanting to give rather than sympathy. That's the first way to sort of learn about great listening skills. My top tip is 2 ears, 1 mouth. That's the proportion you've got them in. Use them like that if you're listening, okay? But Brené's work goes on to be so much more from that. And there's a great whole series of books and resources she has out there. But Dare to Lead would be a great book for leaders who are interested in this kind of thing. And if we look at, and it's not just Brené Brown proving that, let me think of her name, Jacinda Ardern over in New Zealand, the empathy and empathetic leadership that she has shown through the pandemic and beyond has been just phenomenal. And that works for men as well. Like I said, proven by the Google research, they have spent such a lot of time and money proving that. And that's what we had in search and rescue helicopters. That's what enabled me to clip on that hook, get winched out hundreds of feet below the aircraft and put my life in 3 other people's hands. That psychological safety. The pilots would trust us in the back that the rotor tips and the tail rotor weren't going to touch anything, and we would trust them with our lives getting winched outside the helicopter to go and rescue someone. It's all about that psychological safety. It really matters.
And that's so important in personal relationship too.
Absolutely.
That's, I think, vital in being able to go home and know that your partner's got your back. I'm just going to pop this up. My husband went back to work the other day after our daughter's funeral. He needed distraction from pain. I think many men have difficulty sitting with their feelings. Sorry for your loss there, Laurie.
Absolutely, Laurie.
Yeah, that's tough.
I think there's maybe a few things going on there. Well, there's so many things going on there, but work is it can be thought of as a distraction, and it may well be, and in some ways that's great, Laurie, that was maybe the one positive thing that he could find to do, but it's that routine as well. It's so important for so many of us. Work can be really important, but it's not the whole solution. And if someone is completely throwing themselves into work or exercise or any one thing, there's a more healthier approach, having a bit more of a balance. We've been really focused on men today. I know that's your theme as well as mine, Fiona, but women have such an important role to play when it comes to men's mental health. And many men open up to a woman they trust when they don't feel comfortable opening up to another man, and that's okay. So, so many men will open up to their partner. Laurie, yeah, if you can just be there for him, make it okay, and really support him through it. So, yeah,
And
shall I?
getting some support, some external grief for grief is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a complicated process to go through. Cruise is a great organization, and a great website to start there, but there's such a process, all various emotions and phases going through before you come back out. So for many men, actually highlighting to them that other people go through this as well, they're not alone. There's these known stages that you can go through. You go down before you come back up. And for many men, we can pick where we are. I've been through there, I'm actually here. This is what in front of me. It's kind of helps us to get a big picture and map it out. Yeah, Laurie, that is so difficult. I'm not sure how long ago that was, or if there's anything else you want to ask or share with us. But thank you for sharing that with us. Is that why you're joining us today, I wonder?
Laurie's a regular watcher. She's she comes and watches a lot of the talks that we do. But look, do seek the help and support you need. I think is a really important message in whether it's grief or stress or whatever it is. Yeah, so Laurie says it was 5 years ago.
So it does take time, but it is one of the most difficult things for us to actually go through and deal with. And it doesn't necessarily have to be related to death, this bereavement process. It can be for the end of a relationship as well. And it's proven now that that's more difficult for men than women. Women deal with that better than men. I'm just looking up that website, and I'll type it in a moment here for you, just in case it would help anybody else as well. I'll do that in a sec. But yeah, that bereavement process is so difficult for us because there's so many different emotions involved. It's and we've already spoken about how difficult that is for us to recognize, to talk about, to process. So those basic 4 things that I gave you will help. That exercise, talking to someone else, getting a good night's rest, and some kind of mindfulness or relaxation technique. Yeah, let me drop that in the chat, the comments for everyone, if I can. I think I need to put it in the private chat.
In the private chat, then I'll copy it out into. And we do have a lot of viewers in the States as well, so I'm sure there will be equivalent organisations throughout each of the states.
Yeah, so if you just Google bereavement wherever you are and bereavement support, I'm sure the local charities will come up. That's one of my go-to ones in the UK. To be honest, yeah.
Well, thank you, Andy. We have just gone a little over our hour. Thank you so much for all the information you've given us, all the handy hints and tips, and I'm sure people will find this information incredibly powerful. just remind us how we can contact you if anyone wants to speak directly to you.
Yeah, so they can email chinwag@andyelwood.com or go to andyelwood.com and they can contact me through the website.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. An absolute pleasure to talk to you again. And thank you everyone for watching. And if you're on catch up, thank you for your time that you're spending to be with us today. And with that, I shall say goodbye.
Cheerio. Go well. Thank you, Fiona.